The moment the two security guards stepped in front of the tired-looking single father and pointed toward the exit, the entire graduation hall seemed to freeze. Rows of proud parents turned their heads. Hundreds of students sat in silence. A young graduate standing near the front stage suddenly went pale as he watched his father being escorted away. What nobody in that room knew was that within minutes, 10 unexpected guests would walk through those doors and change everything. Before we begin, if you believe kindness, loyalty, and second chances still matter in this world, please take a moment to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share this story with someone you care about, and subscribe to Wisdom Story House for more emotional and inspiring stories. The bright morning sun filled the large auditorium of Westbrook High School. Colorful banners hung from the walls, cameras flashed from every corner, and proud families filled nearly every seat. It was graduation day, one of the most important milestones in a young person's life. Among the crowd sat a man named Garrett Holloway. Garrett's suit was old but carefully pressed. His shoes showed years of wear. Deep lines marked his face, evidence of countless sleepless nights and years of sacrifice. While many parents arrived in expensive cars and fashionable clothes, Garrett came alone in a rusty pickup truck that barely started. Yet no parent in that building felt prouder. His son, Owen Holloway, was graduating at the top of his class. As Garrett sat quietly holding a small bouquet of flowers purchased from a roadside stand that morning, memories flooded his mind. 10 years earlier, life had shattered without warning. Owen's mother had passed away after a sudden illness, leaving Garrett alone with a frightened 8-year-old boy and a mountain of responsibilities. Overnight, he became both mother and father. He packed lunches before sunrise, worked double shifts during the day, helped with homework at night, and somehow found enough energy to comfort a grieving child who missed his mother every single day. Money was always scarce. There were winters when Garrett skipped meals so Owen could have enough food. There were birthdays when handmade gifts replaced store-bought presents. There were nights when Garrett sat at the kitchen table calculating bills and wondering how he would survive another month. But every morning, he kept going. Every sacrifice had one purpose. Owen. The years passed, and Owen grew into a remarkable young man. He excelled academically, volunteered in the community, and earned the respect of teachers and classmates alike. Few people knew the full story behind his success. Few knew about the father who quietly carried the weight of 2 lives on his shoulders. As the graduation ceremony began, Garrett's eyes never left the stage. His heart swelled with pride. This was the moment he had dreamed about through every hardship. Then everything changed. A woman sitting several rows away noticed Garrett. She narrowed her eyes and whispered something to another parent. Within minutes, murmurs began spreading through nearby seats. Several people stared. Some pointed. Garrett felt uncomfortable but tried to ignore it. What he didn't know was that years earlier, during one of the most difficult periods of his life, he had briefly worked as a janitor at the same school. A few parents remembered him from those days and assumed he was somehow in the wrong section reserved for graduates, families. One complaint reached an event coordinator. The coordinator made assumptions without asking questions. Soon, 2 security guards approached Garrett's seat. The hall remained focused on the ceremony, but people nearby watched carefully. The guards spoke quietly. Garrett looked confused. He showed them his invitation. One guard shook his head. The coordinator had already made a decision. Several uncomfortable moments passed. Then Garrett slowly stood up. Humiliation washed across his face. The flowers trembled slightly in his hands. All around him, people watched. Some felt sympathy. Others simply stared. On stage, Owen noticed movement in the crowd. His smile disappeared. He saw his father standing between the guards. For a moment, neither moved. Father and son locked eyes across the crowded auditorium. Years of sacrifice, love, and struggle seemed to pass between them in that silent glance. Garrett forced a small smile. The kind of smile parents use when trying to hide pain from their children. Then he turned toward the exit. The walk felt endless. Every step carried the weight of embarrassment. Every whisper felt louder than the last. Garrett wasn't angry. He was heartbroken. After everything they had survived together, he might miss the most important moment of his son's life. Outside, the warm daylight felt strangely cold. Garrett stood near the entrance, staring at the bouquet in his hands. He considered leaving. Perhaps that would be easier. Perhaps Owen wouldn't want the attention. Perhaps he should simply drive away. Then a familiar memory surfaced. Years earlier, when Owen was only 10, he had fallen from his bicycle and badly injured his arm. Through tears, the boy had asked if things would ever get better. Garrett had knelt beside him and said something he never forgot. Real strength means staying when it's hardest. Now those words echoed back to him. So Garrett stayed. Inside the auditorium, Owen struggled to focus. His classmates celebrated around him, but his thoughts remained fixed on the empty seat where his father should have been. Then another unexpected event occurred. The main entrance opened. 10 men entered together. They moved with calm confidence. Their posture immediately drew attention. The audience gradually turned to look. The men wore dark suits rather than uniforms, but something about them stood out. Years of discipline and service were visible in every step. One by one, they walked toward the front of the auditorium. Whispers spread rapidly. No one knew who they were. No one knew why they had come. The school administrators exchanged confused looks. The graduation ceremony slowed. The room filled with anticipation. The leader of the group approached the principal and quietly spoke a few words. The principal's expression changed instantly. Shock became disbelief. Disbelief became embarrassment. Then the principal looked toward the entrance where Garrett still stood outside. A heavy silence settled over the auditorium. The 10 men weren't random visitors. They were Navy SEAL veterans. And every one of them knew Garrett Holloway. Years ago, before becoming a struggling single father, Garrett had served alongside them during some of the most difficult missions of their military careers. He had never spoken about it publicly. He never sought recognition. He never used his past service for attention. After leaving the military and losing his wife, he focused entirely on raising Owen. But the men he once served with had never forgotten him. They knew the sacrifices he had made. They knew the battles he fought after returning home. Most importantly, they knew the kind of father he had become. The SEAL veterans had learned about Owen's graduation weeks earlier. Wanting to surprise their old friend, they had traveled from different parts of the country to attend the ceremony. Instead, they arrived just in time to witness Garrett being removed. The leader of the group addressed the principal. His voice remained calm, yet every word carried undeniable weight. He explained who Garrett was. He described the courage Garrett had shown in service. He described the years Garrett spent raising his son alone. He described a man who never asked for praise despite carrying burdens that would have broken many others. By the time he finished, tears filled the eyes of several audience members. The room that had judged Garrett moments earlier now saw him differently. Not as a poor man in an old suit. Not as someone who didn't belong. But as a father. A hero. A man defined by character rather than appearance. The principal immediately stood. The ceremony paused completely. He walked toward the entrance himself. The entire audience watched. Garrett looked confused as the principal approached. Then something remarkable happened. The principal apologized. Not quietly. Not privately. But in front of everyone. He invited Garrett back inside. As Garrett entered the auditorium once again, every eye followed him. The same crowd that had watched him leave now rose to its feet. One person began clapping. Then another. Then hundreds more. Within seconds, the auditorium erupted into a standing ovation. The applause thundered through the building. Many parents wiped tears from their faces. Students cheered. Teachers stood proudly. At the front of the room, Owen could no longer hold back his emotions. Tears streamed down his cheeks. For years, he had watched his father sacrifice everything. Now, for the first time, the world was seeing the man he had always known. Garrett stood frozen, overwhelmed, humbled, emotional. The 10 Navy SEAL veterans remained quietly in the background. They hadn't come seeking attention. They simply wanted their friend to receive the respect he deserved. Moments later, Owen's name was called. As he crossed the stage and received his diploma, the applause became even louder. But the proudest sound came from Garrett. A father cheering for the son he had raised against impossible odds. The ceremony ended under bright afternoon sunlight. Families gathered outside for photographs and celebrations. Owen walked directly toward his father and embraced him tightly. Neither needed words. Some moments are too powerful for conversation. Before we reach the end of this story, if Garrett and Owen's journey has touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to Wisdom Story House. Stories like these remind us that true greatness is often hidden behind ordinary faces. And now, a special request. Comment, respect and love, if you believe every hardworking parent deserves appreciation, no matter their background or circumstances. As the sun shined brightly overhead, Garrett looked around at the crowd. For years, he had measured success by bills paid, lunches packed, and dreams protected. That day, he realized something important. The greatest achievement of his life wasn't found in military service, awards, or recognition. It was standing right beside him holding a diploma. Owen, a young man ready to build a future made possible by a father's quiet sacrifices. The 10 veterans eventually gathered around Garrett for a photograph. They laughed, shared memories, and celebrated together. Yet the most meaningful picture captured that day wasn't taken by a professional photographer. It was the image of a father and son standing side by side under the bright afternoon sky. A reminder that dignity cannot be measured by wealth. A reminder that appearances never reveal the full story. And a reminder that sometimes, the strongest heroes are the ones who spend years fighting silent battles for the people they love. If this story moved you, please engage with the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and tell us about someone in your life whose sacrifices deserve recognition. Because behind every successful child, there is often someone who gave up everything so they could succeed. And sometimes, all that person needs is for the world to finally see them. The end.